Ma'am, for being with us. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you very much.
And then right now, we are going back to, we are just going to get a clip on last year's SONA. On the last year's SONA, we are going to get, is the next one that is going to get into our screen soon.
Thank you. No, do no. Why are you showing me standing up? You always say you must wait. Now you don't tell me to wait.
African nation together.
Thank you.
The black rod is the symbol of the authority of the chairperson of the National Council of Provinces. It derives its name from the ebony wood from which the rod is traditionally made. It is carried by the usher of the black rod in the ceremonial processions, such as during a sitting of the house. It is placed upright next to the presiding officer's chair as an indication that the house is formally in session. Similar to the mace, it resembles a nopkiri, an African symbol of defense, authority, and leadership. The black rod stands at a length of 1.1 meter and weighs 8 kilograms. The protea at the head of the black rod is South Africa's national flower. It has 2 rows of 9 handmade 18-karat gold leaves, each representing one of the 9 provinces. The inner core of the protea is made of pure silver and is finished in oxidized silver. The supporting disc below the protea is made of ebony and is connected to the shaft of the rod by 18-karat gold struts. Below the protea is a section of beadwork, which represents South Africa's diverse people and its rich cultural heritage. The shaft of the black rod is made of ebony. The South African coat of arms, made of pure silver and finished in color vitreous enameling, appears twice on the shaft. The shaft is also inlaid with 18-karat gold strips. 2 sets of clasping hands engraved by hand in 18-karat gold also appear on the shaft and symbolize freedom, peace, and cooperation. The national flag appears 3 times on the shaft. The flags are pure silver and are finished in vitreous enameling. 6 gold rings on the shaft of the black rod are made of 18-karat gold. When the National Council of Provinces is in session, the black rod stands in a drum. The drum is a symbol of the African tradition of using drums to call people together for a meeting. It is also symbolic of South Africa's achievement of democracy through dialogue. The drum is made of yellow wood, and the top is covered in springbok skin. Encircling the drum is a pure silver band engraved with images of rock paintings. Placed over these images are further images depicting elements of South Africa's 9 provincial coats of arms in colored vitreous enameling. From the northwest is a calabash gold. From the Free State is a cluster of Orange River lily flowers. From the Northern Cape is a thorn tree. From KwaZulu-Natal is the Strelitzia flower. From Mpumalanga is the red Barberton daisy. The Eastern Cape is represented by the red aloe, indigenous to the Eastern Cape. The Limpopo province is represented by the baobab tree. From Gauteng is the chemical symbol for iron. Lastly, the Western Cape representation is a bunch of grapes. All these come together to epitomize the unity that this nation represents.
President Cyril Ramaphosa will deliver his State of the Nation address to the joint sitting of the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces on Thursday, 9 February 2023 at 7 p.m. The President calls this joint sitting of the Houses of Parliament to set out the government's key policy objectives and deliverables for the year ahead. During SONA, the President also highlights achievements, flags challenges, and outlines interventions that will be undertaken to unlock development interventions for the coming financial year. The presiding officers of Parliament invite you to be part of the SONA 2023 by tuning in live across Parliament's broadcast and multimedia platforms, Parliament Channel 408 on DSTV, YouTube or social media, and join the conversation using hashtag SONA 2023. Parliament, following up on our commitments to the people, making your future work better. The State of the Nation address is followed by the debate, which will be held over 2 days on 14 and 15 February 2023 at 2 p.m. The debate on the State of the Nation address gives political parties an opportunity to debate, comment, and raise questions on matters addressed in the President's speech. Watch the debate on the State of the Nation address live on 14 and 15 February at 2 p.m. across Parliament's platforms. For more information on the SONA debate, visit our website at www.parliament.gov.za or follow us on our social media account at Parliament of RSA. Parliament, following up on our commitments to the people, making your future work better.
Yes, so I am Rutendo Mugwara. I am a part of the Justice Desk. I first joined in the YA project, the Youth Ambassadors Project, and now I'm part of the Active 8, which is essentially a group of young activists that advocate for human rights across South Africa and also across countries and continents, which I'm very proud to be a part of. We do a lot of campaigns here, and my specialty or my area of focus is mental health advocacy and mental health work. One of the issues that I believe is quite a pressing issue is the amount of educated youth that are leaving the country. You know, South Africa's best and brightest, the ones who are meant to propel us to a better future. The youth are the future. And if our youth are leaving the country, then all our talent and our resources, our intellectual resources, are bleeding out of these countries and shifting towards other countries. And from their expertise, which they first initially grew in South Africa, we then have to purchase it and use our South African rands overseas instead of keeping the South African rands in the South African pockets. The youth are leaving because as time moves forward, the economic environment is becoming less and less friendly for the youth. The lack of development that's happening, the poor economic status, especially we can see obviously very glaringly with load shedding, it's not attractive to how the youth want to progress their lives. So I believe that South Africa needs to find a way to keep our youths, to develop our nations, and to just expand a sector in which the youth can really grow and prosper, especially with the terrible unemployment rate of the youth. Where can our youth go in South Africa, and how can we keep them here instead of having them go overseas? I would say I would like to see a development in each economic sector, and I understand that a lot of focus is put on the sciences and stuff like that, but we need other sectors to have development, to be promoted, to be empowered. Giving young people access to jobs in those sectors and really promoting growth in South Africa and having youths have those opportunities for growth, having job opportunities, and even not jobs, but just general involvement in the communities, to grow a deep love of their communities and a deep connection to their communities, because that's how we develop as a nation, especially in the spirit of Ubuntu, which is dwindling every single day. How can we reinstill that in our communities and in our country?
Parliament consists of two houses, namely the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces. The two houses of Parliament conduct their work in plenary sessions, joint sittings, and in committees. Working in committees allows Parliament to increase the amount of work that can be done, ensure issues are debated in more detail than in plenary sessions, and provide a platform for the public to present views directly to members of Parliament, something which is not possible in a plenary sitting of Parliament.
From Agri-SA, Mrs. Harley Stacky is going to do the presentation.
Now, what we must keep in mind is what the Constitution requires of this committee. Now, first off, Section 59, subsection 1A, says that the National Assembly must facilitate public involvement in the legislative and other processes of the Assembly and its committees. So it is very important to remember that this is an obligation of the National Assembly as a whole. This is then also repeated, not repeated, but the same requirement is placed on the National Council of Provinces in Section 72, and it reads very similar to Section 59.
The different committees have various functions which include monitoring and oversight of the work and the budgets of national government departments, considering and amending bills, and may initiate bills, consideration of private members and provincial legislative proposals and special petitions, consideration of international treaties and agreements, examining specific matters of public interest, taking care of domestic parliamentary issues.
Parliament said that the right to public participation had been given effect to by the committee, and that the CRC report was neither binding nor determinative, in that it was not final. It still had to be sent to the two respective houses for further deliberation.
Portfolio committees are appointed from among the members of the National Assembly to shadow the work of the various national government departments. The role of portfolio committees is to consider bills, deal with departmental budget votes, oversee the work of the department they, and make recommendations about any aspect of the department, including its structure, functioning, and policy. Select committees are appointed from among the members of the National Council of Provinces to shadow the work of the various national government departments and to deal with bills.
We've gone through a whole process in phases. Phase one was the fiscal framework and revenue proposals as part of the national budget, which was adopted. The second phase was the Division of Revenue Bill, 76 legislation, which we also took to our 9 provinces, provincial legislators having conducted public hearings, public participation, brought back with negotiating and final mandates being adopted in the NCOP, and now we are at phase 3, where budget votes has been presented to select committees and debated in the House, and today we are concluding the whole process, phase 3, where we deal with the appropriation bill as the bill, and which will then be tabled in the NCOP.
Because only 54 of the 19 National Council of Provinces members are permanent delegates compared to the 400 of the National Assembly, the select committees oversee the work of more than one national government department. The National Assembly Standing Committee on Public Accounts, known as SCOPA, acts as Parliament's watchdog over the way taxpayers' money is spent by the executive. Heads of government departments and institutions are regularly called by this committee to report and account for expenditure.
So what you have in front of you, which will also be beamed up on the screen, is a complete reflection of the teams as they were going through their accounts, auditing them with a statutory mandate to express an opinion on each of those financial statements.
We will hold accountable the executive on the basis of its own commitments and its own interventions. The IMTT is one such intervention which was presented here, and we will deal with the ESCOM matter. It's not negotiable. So I raise this to say I quite frankly do not have the time nor the energy to be sidetracked, and for the committee to be sidetracked to now deal with an issue of absenteeism. The fundamental issue is the issues at hand, and that issue is the municipal debt.
The Standing Committee on Public Accounts can recommend that the National Assembly takes corrective actions if necessary. The National Assembly has a number of internal committees that deal with matters affecting the running of Parliament. The committees normally consist of senior members of Parliament. Amongst these are the Rules Committee and its subcommittees deal with the House rules, the budget of the House, support for members, internal arrangements, and the powers and privileges of members. The Program Committee that plans the work of the Assembly, the Disciplinary Committee, and the Committee of Chairpersons. The National Council of Provinces has its own domestic committees. The Rules Committee and its subcommittees who deal with the NCOP rules, the NCOP budget, parliamentary privileges, internal arrangements, international relations, and delegated legislation. The Program Committee plans the work of the NCOP, and the Committee of Chairpersons makes recommendations about the functioning of committees and other NCOP forums. Parliament or one of its houses may appoint an ad hoc temporary committee when a special task must be done. When the task is complete, the committee is dissolved. The National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces together appoint a number of joint committees. For example, the Constitutional Review Committee, the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence, and the Joint Standing Committee on Defense are statutory committees. This means that they are established by the Constitution or by an Act of Parliament, as well as in terms of the rules of Parliament. Committees are proportionally representative of the parties in Parliament. Committee meetings are open to the public, but may be closed if there is a good reason to do so. Committees have the power to summon any person to appear before them, give evidence, or produce documents. They may require any person or institution to report to them. Committees may also receive petitions, representations, or submissions from the public. Each committee is headed by a chairperson. The work of committees is not restricted to government. They may investigate any matter of public interest that falls within their area of responsibility. The committees play a very important role in the process of building democracy and involving the public in the processes and activities of Parliament. Visit parliament.gov.za. Parliament. Following up on our commitments to the people, making your future work better.
Good afternoon and welcome back. If you're just joining us, you're still watching Parliament TV on DSTV channel 408, from where the President of the Republic, His Excellency, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, will be delivering his 2023 State of the Nation address. I do now have the pleasure of being joined by the esteemed newly appointed Secretary to Parliament, Mr. Xolile George, who will be talking to us about preparations for this evening's State of the Nation address, and of course, all related matters that relate to, the policy priorities and all of the issues that will be on the agenda for discussion and for announcement at this evening's State of the Nation address. Secretary, thank you very much for making the time to be with us.
Good morning, Sibu. Good morning to all the Parliament TV viewers.
Wonderful. This month, the month of February, just marks over 6 months. I think it's just about 6 months since you started in Parliament. What has the transition been like for you, having served in Salga for so many years and being here now?
Well, if it was not a transition that needed urgency, so one would say you finished this month, and then next month, cool off, and then prepare yourself for another assignment.
Right.
But when you transition on the 14th of June, and then you move on the 15th of June. Just imagine the difficulties that one has to deal with. But nevertheless, the challenge is well received, but it also helps one to use the acquired experience of executive implementation and also the legislative implementation. So blending those together, and you arrive at an institution which is at the apex of our system of governance.
Absolutely.
In terms of the role of the legislatures. It is one of those areas where you both accept the challenge with humility, but at the same time begin to make commitments about how you place all your energies to execute the task at hand. So the challenge is there, the environment is quite exciting, but it is also an environment that is facing many intersecting challenges. And sometimes some of those challenges, you would look at them and hope that things would have been smoothened by now.
Yes.
But then you still experience quite a lot of challenges that in an institution that is 29 years of its existence, there are areas that you would regard as basic shifts that perhaps we have not moved with the desired speed at the level of the administration, so that we can match up with the required capabilities to service the core infrastructure of the organization, which is lawmaking, mandate, public participation, and performing executive, oversight over the executive. So it's a challenging environment, but there's a lot of prospects where in the context of innovative opportunities.
Absolutely.
That the constraints of COVID-19 place before everyone, whether private or public, and more specifically for institutions that are required to continue to be agile, like Parliament, dynamic interface with the people, robustly ensuring that the oversight machinery improves the quality of governance in our country. So those opportunities are very important for us to innovate around. And I think COVID-19 has driven Parliament relatively towards the shift towards starting with the building blocks of building resilience in the institution. We just have to make sure that we up the game and improve the internal environment so that all the key players in the ecosystem of the administration of Parliament, they intersect correctly with the requisite support to make sure that functioning in the core business receives the necessary oiling, not at the level of procedural adherence that the committee must sit and then the minutes must be issued, but the degree to which we infuse insight into the conversation.
Absolutely.
Using experience of the foresight that for this period, this is where we are. How do we then start focusing for the future and say, if you were to run the next oversight in a structure that is clustered, but the execution is individual on sectors, how do you begin to start projecting that the following entities might likely face financial liquidity challenges? Do we have such capabilities as Parliament? So that our trigger for oversight is not only performed on the basis of a report brought by ESCOM or a report brought by DENEL or SAA. Our forecasting model tells Parliament upfront that we have looked at this space. This is what we project going forward. So that means us having capacity to understand each sector we have a responsibility to oversee, to make sure that when we must get aviation expertise in terms of insight, we are able to draw on those and begin to say, it looks like it's financial modeling, but what are the operational intersections between the financial statements and the operating capability of the institution? So it means having the right mix in our research capability, having the right mix of people who will be able to make sure that any APP brought before Parliament is not an APP for sign-off. It's an APP for serious introspection, a serious interrogation, and that requires us remodeling our turnaround times. So it is not a cycle that says in March. It's a cycle for committees now to receive draft APPs. We ask them 6 months in advance, so that we are the ones who say we have looked at it, we have projected on this issue, we have referred it back. It doesn't look like it responds to the issues that are facing an industry of that nature. So that requires us to strengthen and remodel some of our operations.
Absolutely. You talk about the constitutional mandate of Parliament, of oversight. Importantly, we know obviously there's lawmaking, but at this point in time, the issue of oversight is so critical. That pillar is so important, particularly given the current context that we find ourselves in. COVID-19 has had a profound impact on the economy. There's a lot of people that have lost jobs, people who are unemployed at the moment. Talk to us about how important this year's State of the Nation address is, because we know that we've gone through shifts as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So the 7 priorities that we started with in 2019, we've had to make shifts along the way. How does Parliament reposition itself in this year, in this final year, so to speak, of the 6th dispensation, to ensure that we garner more deliverables through oversight and, of course, through social compact and collaboration with the executive for the current financial year?
Well, Sabu, it's a very important question that you are asking, because what it does, it places a challenge to us as Parliament to say, how do we shift the gear on our 5-year strategy, the core pillars that we all sing about. But what makes a distinguishing aspect of execution is your ability to translate what is your outputs. We look more intense on the outputs, number of committees set, number of annual reports presented, and number of budget speeches presented. Well, from a cycle of governance operation, that's very important. But once we have a pillar that says improving the quality of governance, improving executive oversight, then the question is, how do we begin to measure the impact of those outputs in such a way that we are able to say, here are the schools in the Eastern Cape. It's 29 years down democracy. The following schools still do not have sanitation. So what is the role of our committees that deal with those issues around water and sanitation, working together with the Committee on Education, receiving a report about there's improvement in performance on the class. This district is doing very well. But the one of sanitation doesn't receive that separately from the Ministry of Water. It receives it there. What are the attendant issues that are central to creating conditions conducive for learner performance? Not only the subject advisor not there, the access to water and sanitation is very central to improving the quality of learner environment. So our ability to intersect those issues in such a way that when they are considered, they are not considered in a separate approach, we deal with them, including receiving a speech, a budget speech that says things are in order, we are allocating this money. Parliament must be upfront and say it has interrogated its own recess outputs during June and January and begin to say to the structures of Parliament, these are the issues raised. We picked up that in Limpopo, children are still falling in pit latrines. The following 84 schools do not have sanitation facility for children. So that when the speech comes, members are not only looking at it, they are asking this question, this matter, if you are not covering these issues, do not come to us next year and present a budget speech.
Absolutely.
So
Secretary,
it becomes a healthy tension of performing oversight and almost becoming a guardian of the attainment of the aspirations of people. So we don't pass a budget, then thereafter 44 children have drowned in a toilet. But you don't have a connection that says, but what happened? And then we pass a budget as Parliament for education, and we don't ask a question, Eastern Cape, why successively 10 years in a row you don't deliver books on time? You know the cycle of learning. So if your budget speech doesn't say to us, there will be delivery, here is the logistics plan for delivery, do not expect us that we're going to appropriate this budget as Parliament. So you make the system to work in such a way that drivers of tensions are productive drivers of tension, but create necessary tension in the system so that accountability must be elevated. So when we look at the sixth strategy, we must be able to say the seventh Parliament must then move in full gear towards impact and outcomes to connect these issues in such a way that we are able to say, for this period, as a result of us performing oversight over the following entities, these are the improvements we have begun to notice. And that becomes part of our report. Even if it's not in a year, it becomes part of our framing that's going to be cumulative, but we are beginning to measure exactly that on the energy reliability factor, on the water, on the roads, and including revisitation of laws passed by Parliament. So we don't wait for the executive to say, we want to effect the Sixth Amendment to this bill or the Third Amendment. Parliament itself looks at it. We may have passed this bill, but to us, over the next 2 years, we've examined its efficacy to improve gender-based violence. We are effecting changes because it's a duty of Parliament to pass laws. It's not the duty of Parliament to transmit the executive laws. The duty is to make laws that responds to the constitutional imperative. And that's the kind of shift we want to see in the seventh Parliament. So at Parliament's mandate is understood as such to make sure that it becomes a propelling platform to the attainment of the ideals in our Constitution.
Secretary, you raise a very important point about understanding the development landscape, especially at the subnational level, at provincial level, at local government level. If there isn't an understanding in Parliament, if there isn't a knowledge base of the data that sits there that must actually inform the oversight agenda of Parliament, then we're sitting with a challenge. Already it sounds to me like you've already done some kind of analysis administratively to begin to identify where the challenges are and what needs to be unblocked and what needs to be improved in order for members of Parliament to be supported with the right kind of information that will give them deeper insights so that they're able to then use that information, that data, to ensure that they not only frame the oversight agenda of the institution, but they're able to also inform the transformation agenda of the country. Talk to us about some of the innovations that we can expect, particularly with regards to overseeing accelerated implementation of these priorities from 2019. Obviously, we know that there's some shifts that have taken place, but obviously there's still 2030 that is looming. What kind of systems are you putting in place? And I hear you already talking about the 7th Parliament, the kind of changes that we want to see, but talk to us specifically, what administrative mechanisms and protocols are you putting in place to begin to ensure that we put systems in place for members to be able to be more effective and for this Parliament to be more effective in its oversight with more deliverables?
Well, Sabu, we had a very good session in the last, not in the last, in the first week of November last year.
Yes, I remember that.
Where we began to shape what we call the pillars of the new strategy of Parliament. How do we drive a collaborative Parliament? How do we make sure that the transformative intent in the Constitution is translated into a deliberate pillar that says a responsive Parliament is going to do the following things. And on the basis of that, those pillars will be canvassing them across the organization to make sure that we galvanize everyone behind understanding what are the impactful shifts we want to see going forward.
Yes.
The issue of investment in the research capability of Parliament to make sure that data-driven insights are central to the functioning of committees of Parliament.
Absolutely.
So we're going to be deliberate in investing in a strong data-driven quality analysis of our work, so that those kind of insights give us better forecasting model. So that when we say there's a report released by Stats SA, non-financial census report, it says year on year, this is the number of people connected on the grid, number of people connected on water. It's not only to celebrate the number of units, it's to draw the interrelationship between that growth in delivery versus the resources allocated, and whether in that process, had there been better resource allocation, we would have reduced further this part of work. Are we able to have that a relationship as Parliament with data insights? Financial census gets released by States A, labor force surveys gets released by States SA, showing us the decline or improvement in productivity in the labor sector. Where those reports land, where do they land? What is the attitude of Parliament when States SA stands there and say, here is a report? National Treasury releases every year what is called Section 79 reports, Section 71 rather, for financing of local government. They do the same for provincial departments. The question is, does Parliament say those reports are for Treasury to be given there, or it develops a very close relationship with them? So that when it looks at Q2 reviews and Q3, you are able to say, we have projected these reports, we need the following. So I don't only call municipalities when there's or it can't do anything. Then we want to know what's happening. We don't have an ability to project in future how this thing must be done. I think once we improve that, it will be better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Secretary, I think we will have more time after the State of the Nation address to delve deeper into these issues, because I really feel that there's so much more that can be discussed and unpacked, particularly in terms of the priorities that the President will be announcing. Of course, we have to be reflective as well, look at the entire 7 priorities. We do look forward to having more conversations with you in terms of where you're taking the institution under your leadership, but unfortunately that's where we have to leave it for now. But I want to thank you very much for making the time, but we will have time in going forward, I'm sure during the debate, the SONA debate, to unpack more of these issues.
Thank you very much, sir.
Wonderful. That was the Secretary, the newly appointed Secretary to Parliament, Ndate Xolile George, who was just talking to us about what to expect, the changes and the observations that he's made with regards to the quality of administrative support that he intends to infuse or inculcate in order to make sure that members of Parliament are able to do their work in a more impactful and effective manner. Do stay tuned. We do have more lined up.
Thank you very much, sir. So I might...
Well, we have the rules in order to regulate business. The Constitution states that the legislature, which is Parliament, has the power to regulate its own business and to ensure that procedures processes and internal arrangements are in place so that members can conduct their business in an orderly function, but also to ensure a level of predictability in the manner things are done. And that's in essence why we have the rules. Well, State of the Nation Address has been convened in terms, among others, of Rule 7, Joint Rule 7. And that's important because each of the two houses has got a set of rules. But for a joint sitting, including the State of the Nation Address, you have joint rules that are meant to regulate business in a joint sitting. So the rules that relate to the convening of the sitting itself will apply. The rules of debate will also apply. The rules that deal with order in public meetings will apply to ensure that principles of order, the decorum of the House, such are adhered to. So those rules will be applicable. There were amendments in 2015 of the joint rules, and those amendments were basically to improve the joint rules to deal properly with issues of decorum in the House. Because at the time it was identified that there needed to be some work done on the rules so that they are able to address some of the issues that have arisen before and that were arising at the time and that might continue to arise. So the rules were amended in 2015 to take care of that. And as and when there is a need to update the rules, to adjust the rules in order to respond to current issues, the rules will be revisited and they will be amended. And the amendment of the rules is done by, depending on which set of rules, is done by the House. Like any other sitting, there must be a notice of the sitting. In this instance, the notice was published last year already, following on the correspondence from the President. And we ensure that that chamber is ready to accommodate the members. In other words, the sound, the procedural aspects are attended to, and the House, the chamber is ready for business. I mean, this being a joint sitting, it's NA members, NCOP members. There must be enough in terms of space to accommodate both these houses. So we attend to those, among other things. There's a whole range of work that is attended to behind the scenes to ensure that the members are able to conduct their work properly and with all the information that they need at their disposal. Remember, this State of the Nation Address will be followed by a debate the following week, and that debate will last for 2 days, and following the debate will be a reply by the President. So it's not just about Thursday, it's a process that will culminate in the reply by the President. House officials, or what we refer to as table officials, they are there to assist the Speaker, to assist the members, to enable them to conduct their business. So we would do things like monitor the time. We would be able to track the items being dealt with. We would ensure that the necessary documentation is available. But most importantly, we are there to ensure that the House conducts itself, its business, in terms of the Constitution and its own rules. So we would ensure that if a bill comes before the House, you have the necessary quorum for that bill to go through. You would ensure that as members debate, we assist the Speaker or the presiding officer to ensure that principles of decorum are adhered to. So our duty there, we are advisors. Primarily, we are there to advise. The presiding officer is the one who runs the business of the House, but we must ensure that the presiding officer is adequately assisted in terms of the advice that we give to the presiding officer.
Welcome back. You are still watching the live broadcast of Parliament TV on DSTV channel 408. It is a build-up show to the State of the Nation address tonight. Advocate Pindela is the Secretary to the National Council of Provinces. Together with the Secretary of the National Assembly, they are both responsible for ensuring the smooth running of the joint sitting. And he joins us now in studio. Good morning, Advocate, and how are you?
Good morning, I'm good, yourself.
I'm good, thank you very much. Advocate, if you can just briefly share with us what is the role of the Secretary in the NCOP that seeks to ensure that he assists the presiding officers in preparation for SONA.
Thank you very much. It's precisely that, to make sure that the presiding officers are well briefed insofar as the proceedings are concerned. To point out to the presiding officers the rules that are applicable, to assist them in the interpretation of the rules, and to make sure that they are conversant with the rules that would be applicable for the purposes of the sitting of today. Because they are presiding officers of different houses, so sometimes it may happen that they would tend to apply the rules of their specific houses instead of the rules that are applicable to the joint sitting, which are the joint rules. So we have to make sure that they are indeed attuned to the processes and proceedings of a joint sitting.
So having mentioned those two houses, there are different rules, the NA and the NCOP. So how have you worked together with the NA to ensure that jointly the State of the Nation becomes a success?
The joint rule has to bear the hallmark of, the joint sitting has to bear the hallmark of a joint sitting. It does not have to look like individual houses sitting, but it should look like two houses sitting together to constitute Parliament. So we have to make sure that indeed the rules that are applicable are the joint rules, or are the rules relevant to the sitting itself. So we have to prepare the presiding officers to ensure that they do apply the joint rules. And like you have indicated, we have to sit together with the Secretary of the National Assembly to ensure that we prepare for the joint sitting, and to make sure that the joint sitting characterizes the joint sitting, indeed, the two houses sitting together, but as one.
And I understand that there is a process, an ongoing process to amend these joint rules. What were some of the contentious issues that led to such amendment?
Well, if you look at the joint rules, it appears that the last time the joint rules were amended was in 2011. But the joint rules were also amended in 2015. So ever since, 7 years down the line, there have been a lot of developments insofar as the practices and conventions are concerned. So we have to make sure that those processes, conventions, practices are reflected in the joint rules, so that the joint rules are a compendium of the processes and proceedings, the practices, the conventions of the joint sitting.
And you know, there's this trend whereby even some of our viewers would be saying that there seem to be robust debates in the NA than in the National Council of Provinces. So to this end, what are some of the challenges that emerge during joint sittings, which significantly shift the posture and interaction of NCOP members on the joint sitting platform?
Look, the two houses participate in accordance with their proportion in the joint sitting. So you would find that there are members of National Assembly who participate in the debate. there are members of or delegates of the National Council of Provinces who participate in the debate. We cannot then compare the quality of the debate in terms of the houses or in terms of the members that are participating in the debate. The debate itself must reflect the joint posture of the two houses. So when the two houses are sitting together, they constitute parliament, and therefore they're sitting as one.
Okay, definitely the sitting is one. Just before I let you go, Advocate, what can we expect from the NCOP for this year? What are the plans for this year in relation to parliament oversight?
Well, we just emerged from taking parliament to the people in November. So we will be taking a debate on the report of taking parliament to the people. We'll also be having the local government week, where we'll be joining together with the provincial legislatures and local government to discuss or to debate matters related to local government and to look at solutions for matters relating to local government. We'll also be having ministerial briefings. We'll be having questions to the Deputy President. We'll be having committee meetings, and we'll be having several debates. Particularly, for instance, we'll be having debate on water infrastructure, the provision of water and water infrastructure. So it's going to be a very busy first quarter of the National Council of Provinces.
And talking about that debate on water and water infrastructure, what is it that you think we can expect from that? Because I believe that there are many, water and water infrastructure is currently a challenge. I come from Umtata, and where I come from, we do not have water, and we have not had water for the past 2 years. So what is it that the public and the South African can expect as outcome of those debates?
Well, we have a rule or a rule against anticipation. So I do not want to anticipate the debate of the House, but I'm sure they will deal with those matters, because there's water scarcity throughout the country. Not only scarcity, but there's also water is wasted through leakages and this and so on and so on. So I'm sure they'll deal with those matters, possibly the building of dams or the maintenance of the current infrastructure, the development of new infrastructure to enable the communities to have access to water.
Advocate Pindela, thank you very much for always granting Parliament TV interviews. It's really much appreciated.
Thank you very much.
Well, viewers, as I have indicated, that was Advocate Pindela. He's the Secretary to the National Council of Provinces, and was sharing with Parliament TV on what to expect during the course of this day and what are some of the contentious things that the joint rules deal with. From here, we're going to have to just watch at what the presiding officers of Parliament had to say on Tuesday when they briefed the media.